Hi, I'm Allison.
And I'm Tom.
And today we're going to talk about generations.
But then, we're also seeing economic shifts and changes too. And this was going on from like the 70s and beyond, especially in the 80s. And this is because this happened to all generations. I saw it because I've been around the longest. You saw it because you were next and you experienced being a part of it. But three massive things happened to our culture that changed our economic and socio-political system. And that is, we saw companies buy out other companies. These were like all the big corporations were buying the smaller ones, and they just got bigger and bigger, the monopolies of the 80s. We globalized during this time. So jobs went overseas for the first time and away from our country, and then technology took over industry. That changed everything, and every generation is affected by that, but the most affected are millennials.
Yes.
Because millennials are very different than boomers in one way, but very similar in another. Because millennials now are the next largest generation of souls born. And the boomers are very resentful to them because they said, oh no, we're going to do what we want, which is the same message we gave when we were their age, when we were in our late teens, early 20s. And then we didn't. And then we gave our kids everything to make them feel they can do anything and win at everything and never lose. And so, but the reason they say that is because there is no choice or option for them other than that. So when you hire a 25-year-old and they walk out because they don't want to work there, then that's their consciousness, because there is no system now that stays that anyone can work at for 30 years because the changes happen so much faster.
But I will say the millennials that have a natural drive, they're going to clean up.
Oh, they're entrepreneurial.
Because we're reading some of the really successful millennials that are just up there in their 30s and they're figuring it out. And then there's this other fraction of millennials that are more of it's as if with baby boomers, they used to make fun of the hippies that stayed a hippie too long and they were in their 40s still with the long hair and the vest, but not looking so good.
Yeah, the slackers.
Yeah, the slackers, okay. So you're gonna have the 40-something, because they turn the first, don't they start turning 40 in the next couple of years?
They do, yes.
You're going to see them with pink hair and unicorn horns and protesting, and they're really going to have to look at their life when they go to the doctor and they're told that they're perimenopausal. And they kind of miss the whole point of like living the life, because I find millennials, not as a whole, but a large percentage of them, spend way too much time on social issues, and they lost focus of their own individual personal lives because they're trying so hard to make a difference that will be made anyways, and they're really forfeiting their lives.
Well, that's one of the contrasts with millennials. Now, millennials, their idea of survival is independence and adaptability, which my generation was just dependency and loyalty. And so that's shifted now because they're on their own and they know this. But and that's one of the things that's the contrary is that they're very communal to each other. And the reason they are is, I'll go back to astrology, that Pluto during the millennials, as we go into this cusp between Gen Xers to millennials and now even possibly Gen Z, is that Pluto was in Libra and in Scorpio, which are the social signs and the connecting signs of people. So, and this is why shows like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette are huge to this generation. They're obsessed with relationships and all the stuff, and being involved in the Kardashians and all these types of things, because I know, but we're not that generation.
Yeah.
I laugh though, because there are similarities between television shows that I grew up with that were resurfaced later in a new way in reality shows. And one of those was Survivor. It's like, let's take a group of diverse people.
Gilligan's Island?
Gilligan's Island, yes. Except they were all white.
And it was funny.
Gilligan's Island.
And it was funny.
and it was funny, yeah. But yeah.
That's true. Well, and there were gowns and jewelry and ginger. I mean, it made it so nice.
It was comical by the types of people they put in, but these are like, the best looking people, or, they're all like athletic, and it's just so funny.
It is interesting watching television, because it does show you, like you see network television, you're seeing the actors become much older, because boomers always watched TV. They were excited to get their first TV as little kids, So the TV is a big part of, I think, their generation.
Well, it was my
Electronics and
babysitter.
technology,
TV
right?
dinners and TV when the parents went out
Right.
and socialized with their friends.
So they're watching TV, but millennials are like, I'll watch Netflix,
Right.
you know, or I'll watch YouTube channel. I'm going to go on the YouTube channel. I know our daughters do, and they don't watch TV mostly, except she does watch The Bachelorette and Bachelor. I'm like, oh, Sophia.
Yeah, that's your Sophia, yes.
she believes in love.
Yeah. But they do. They're very fascinated by that. And, you know, if you look at their choices, this is the other thing that's just rapidly shifted and changed as we move forward through these generations, the choices. And you and I were talking very recently, and we wanted to put in this video about, you know, women getting married much later and not having children much later.
That's true, yes. With the life readings that I do, career, relationship, children, your health, your own abilities, your parents. Those are what people generally cover. And I find that when I read the Gen Xers, hand to God, read a woman, 50, and in her eighth month of pregnancy. And I think with Gen Xers, like I got married young, which I said I'd never do. I was never going to get married. I didn't want kids. I was going to be, you know, living in a penthouse in Manhattan. Now I'm glad that didn't happen, but you know, it worked out the way it needed to.
What's your last life?
Right, it was my last line. So I read a 50-year-old woman, so she's a Gen Xer, and she was 8 months pregnant. And she wanted to know if the baby was going to be okay, and that really hit me because most people that I know of my year in high school all ended up getting married young and having kids, but also had the career. They did both.
Right.
So all of the women that I went to junior high and high school with, they were just successful. They just did both. They did everything. And so to hear, when I do some readings, it's interesting. I get a lot of 42 to 45-year-old women saying they're happy with their business career, they're happy with their business life, and now they want to get married and have a baby. And I'm always caught off guard by that because you can't manufacture a husband. I mean, you could buy certain parts to have a baby, but they want everything now, like right now. And it's just, you have to like fall in love, you have to have eggs to have children.
Healthy eggs, yes.
And I just found it so stunning because the Gen Xers I knew just didn't take that path, but I see that there are a lot that waited until their 40s, which the boomers also did, which is where the millennials, the older millennials came from.
Right.
And now we have the millennials, and what's refreshing to me about them, the women at least that I'm reading, mind you, I'm not reading the women with the unicorn horn and the purple hair. It's just they tend to not be my clients for whatever reason, but whatever. They start their career and then they're asking about relationship stuff at 32. Like at the right time,
right.
You know, when you want to start thinking about that. So for all of you millennials that are out there, the women most especially, because you're the most effective when it comes to having children. Men can have it much later, obviously. They can have children, then marry somebody younger. But for women, I'm just saying to you, out of absolute care and affection, think about it, start thinking about it at 30. Like, think about putting yourself out there and falling in love. Don't be afraid that you're going to get hurt. Sometimes we get hurt, we learn from it. We have flaws. Don't apologize for your flaws. Your flaws make you beautiful. There's a man out there for every woman. We've seen this on television. That's a joke. No, there's a man out there for every woman and a woman for every man. It's a matter of, and I always say, do you travel to my clients? And often I'll hear, no, I work all the time, but I really want to meet somebody. And I'm not really a big believer in the going online and meeting someone. I know you can. I know you can.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to have it organically, and I wanted a story.
You really have an old-fashioned story, though, even being a Gen Xer. But, you know, when we're looking at, like, Allison and I are doing readings for millennials, and
they're so easy to read.
I will tell you
so
that
great.
You come in with karmic relationships from how it was going in your past life very early on. So when you start dating, especially in your 20s, since you can put it off and get through the karma and see the pattern of what you keep repeating, and that's not working out, that's what you're not supposed to get married to. Just be aware of that. And so
Right.
Allison's right that 28 to 30 is in astrology called the Saturn Return. And this is where you're trying to stop the past story and the karma from it and redo your life in this way, the way you really want it. And so you have to stop and ask yourself, am I getting married because the outside message from all my girlfriends
Right.
getting married, my parents wanting grandkids, whatever that looks like, don't listen to it.
Yeah, don't do it.
What do you want? And I always ask in a reading of a millennial, what do you really want in this life of those big issues? You know, how important is the career? You can do both, but you've got to do it the way that works for you and not just the way the society says you're just supposed to because everybody else is.
That's really good advice. Thank you for saying that, because my mom had been married multiple times, so I was never going to get married. But the only I know. But the only way that it would ever happen is if I met that one person. That one person. I'm like, that won't happen. So I really was just a young woman who thought I was a young guy. That you date somebody and you're like, yeah, it's not working, and you just move on. So I was very much that person. And then I met Joe, and like out of nowhere, I was like not expecting to fall,
Right.
but I did. And it's the only way I could have walked down the aisle, as if it was for the right reason. And so it was easy to walk down the aisle to him. But I mean, I wish that for everyone. I know that that's not in everybody's plan, maybe. But I think for most people, a happy ending is in their plan.
Well, the reason I said this is because I've been doing this work for 32 years. And so I've done a lot of boomers and a great...
You have?
Yeah.
I'm just
readings,
kidding. That was
essentially.
A joke. I'm just kidding.
And then a huge amount of Gen Xers. But I'm going to give you this statistic because it is my own personal statistic, especially to boomers and then the early Gen Xers. I asked them the question of, why you married the first person you married. And I'm going to tell you, they never last for, like a lot. But I would say 80% of them will say the thing, well, I fell in love, or all these kinds of things. And that really isn't it. That's what they're supposed to say or think. 80% of the women that I have done readings for through those generations tell me, I knew the night before my wedding or even walking down the aisle, I should not get married to this person. I can't tell you, that is 100% true.
Right. It's astounding, and that makes me sad for those people. I can't imagine living in a kind of loveless marriage that way.
That's why they don't last. And then usually around 28, 30, then they find the person that is going to work out better. Sometimes they wait till their 40s and 50s. This is 2 or 3, 4 marriages at times. So people, hopefully they've got to figure out what they want early, rather than go through this trial and error thing and just getting married to get married or be in a relationship to be in a relationship.
Well, and I think millennial women especially have to be very careful about the next 10 years of their life, because I've seen the boomers do it and I've seen the Gen Xers do it, the women, where they wait too long. They keep putting it off. You can now have both. You can have a career and you can have a family. It's a lot of work. You have to put in the work. So when people say to me, oh, it's so hard, I'm like, oh, is it? Because I had 3 kids under 5 and finished college. So
yeah, but you're fierce.
And I interned in homicide and created a video on how to avoid child abduction. I'm like, is it? And I was a Girl Scout leader.
Yeah.
Little known fact.
Oh, there you go. Well, now we're not even addressing the men in this storyline. So,
Sorry
but
about
we don't
that.
see a lot of men because men aren't as open as women in terms of get information because they already think they know everything. I know I do.
I know, right? The only millennial men that I really read, occasionally I'll get one who lost somebody and they're still young and lost a wife, and I'll read them. Or the mother that the son lives with books a reading for me to do a life reading to get her son out of the house.
Yeah.
So, the man living with his mother is a real thing right now.
But that's a millennial issue because of the economic shifts and changes that happened.
And now we have the highest employment in 50 years, and they need to get out.
Yeah.
They need to get out of their mom's house.
Yeah, but it's more fun to be in the basement playing video games than it is going out looking for a job.
Every time I read a mother, and she has the son that is the pot-smoking, video game playing, living at home with mom. Yes, I said it. Living at home with mom, and that's a recipe for disaster for everybody out there that's watching this. It's only the guy that's having a good time that's enjoying it, and he won't be able to pay the taxes when mom dies and he assumes her house.
Yeah.
So I always say to the moms, do you want him to be waiting for you to die and just take over your house? Because that's what's going to happen here. Yeah. He's not looking to get out. Or they'll look for a woman who makes money to get out of the house.
To take care of them like another mother.
And have kids with, so they can be a stay-at-home dad.
Right.
But like women of boomer generations and Gen X, the males, the millennial males that are stay-at-home dads don't have a plan in case the marriage doesn't work out. So they just reversed roles with all of the women from those generations because they're going to raise the kids and then be like, now what? But just like what women have experienced.
That is true. That is the dark part of that storyline. But the plus part of that storyline is that you're seeing men now become more involved with families. They're not absent fathers anymore because the men have evolved to the fact that the mom's working too, so he's got to pull his weight in terms of raising the children and household chores or whatever, and it's now become more of a team than a separation. I
like that.
The
I like
man's
how involved they
runs his outside world and she runs the inside world, and now there are teams, and that's how it's evolved. And so the men that you marry, that you realize that, you know, we're going to do this together. And the younger generation, the millennial men, the really good ones are the ones that they like to play with the kids. They want to be a part of their lives and go to their games and go to their plays and do these things.
They're very hands-on fathers.
Yes, and you know, your husband, Joe, was very much that way.
I was going to say that when Medium came out, when the television series came out, the part of it that was so hard for people to wrap their mind around was how hands-on Joe was with our girls, getting them ready, doing their hair. You know, he was just a real Joe is that dad. I mean, he was beautifully portrayed in the show. But people, like women at my book signings, oh my God, they're like, he's so amazing. I'm like, get one of your own. But it was amazing because Gen X dads weren't encouraged necessarily to be hands-on. But I think a lot of them figured it out on their own because they were the dad that some of them didn't have and wished they'd had.
It's also the transition of getting used to women and working with women.
Right.
And go, what do I do? I'm in my job, but then I've got a female boss, and then my wife's not. I mean, I'm very confused as a man of a Gen X generation.
Well, and some of the males in Gen X had great fathers and did what their fathers did. So I think a lot of the Gen Z raised by Gen X have very hands-on dads, especially. I'm sure there's some millennials out there too that were raised by Gen X dads. But I just find it fascinating. So when the show came out, people loved watching our family dynamic. It was cool that I could see the future, great that I worked crimes, but what was really significant was the family dynamic. And it's so refreshing and wonderful to see that that's becoming a norm now.
Yes, it is. I remember in the 60s watching shows like That Girl with Marla Thomas, and she was, going into the workplace, and that was a big deal, and that became more of a focus, but she had the boyfriend. And then you saw the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and then she was single, and she worked in a radio or news studio, and all that. And these were all...
Then you have Angie Dickinson, Policewoman, which is more of what I watched, and Cagney and Lacey, right? Where they become more hands-on and tough. Once you subscribe, click the bell so you know when we're going to go live for our live broadcasts.
And if you wish to have a reading with me, just go to my website at tommcmullan.com, and it gives you all the information you'll need about me and how to contact me.